So it's my pleasure to welcome you on behalf of the Local Government Commission. Good to see a lot of familiar faces and some new faces as well. In preparation for this conference, I've been thinking about what we've all collectively achieved over the years and where some more work might be needed. And part of looking at this was some unfortunate news and a tough reality for us, which is for the first time in 17 years of the conference, we were unable to partner on this event with our major supporter from US EPA and from the other federal agencies. And we've been able to work closely with them over many different administrations, Republican, Democrat. So we know that there has been support across parties for this type of work. But this administration clearly did not recognize that the type of conversation that we're going to have over the next 3 days was important and was critical. So that forced me to take a hard look to determine, is this still critical? We've been working for 17 years to mainstream smart growth concepts and smart growth policies. So do we still need to be showing up here? Do we still need to be working together? Yes, we do. We do. And here are some reasons why. So the first reason is the growing urgency of climate change. So as a group of practitioners and advocates, we recognized early on that it was critical that we work on climate change. We knew it was an imperative for us for a lot of different reasons, for the environment, but also for environmental justice. And we understood that as a group of smart growth practitioners and advocates, that there was a critical role for us to play leading on climate change. 2017 just brought that urgency into even sharper focus. With the firestorms and mudslides we experienced here in the West, and also with hurricanes in the Southeast and other natural disasters all across the nation. And we know that climate change is going to continue to have costly impacts on our nation, and that these impacts aren't going to be experienced evenly across the communities that we live in. Unfortunately, it's the poorest counties that are going to experience the disproportionate costs of climate change. This study estimated that the poorest counties could experience a loss between 2 and 25% of income. So that doesn't just hurt workers and communities, it also hurts the tax base that government services are dependent on. And we know where these emissions come from, and we know the levers that we can impact. We know that 2/3 of emissions come from the transportation networks we depend on and from the energy we consume. And both of these areas are impacted by land use and community design decisions. So we can make a difference here. And the bottom line is smart growth communities are climate-friendly communities. And this map from the Center for Neighborhood Technology powerfully illustrates that fact. Households in location-efficient urban neighborhoods are half or less of the greenhouse gas emissions in the least efficient car-dependent neighborhoods. And that isn't just true of larger cities like San Francisco and Oakland here in the Bay Area, but it's true of small and midtown cities all over the United States. And I really encourage you to check out this map to look at where your community stands. It can be a really powerful educational tool. And convenings like this have made a big difference in equipping people to act and raising awareness of the challenges we face. Recently, Eco America did a national survey, and they looked at a number of factors, and the bottom line was the LGC network is acting on climate change at twice the rate of the national average. We're doing more in our communities to conserve energy. We're setting ambitious climate goals. We're purchasing clean energy, and we're educating the public at twice the rate of the nation. And it's just it's not just these community level actions we're taking. We're taking individual actions as well. We're conserving energy, and we're shifting to cleaner and healthier modes of transportation at higher rates than the rest of the nation. So mission accomplished, right? Well, not quite. So there are new fields, there are emerging areas that we still need to continue to have smart growth and equity advocates at the table. These areas, the field that we're working in is evolving rapidly. And there's still a question as to the future livability, prosperity, and equity of our communities. That future will be shaped by people who are at the table making these decisions about things like autonomous vehicles. We need to be at that table. We've seen some really promising trends in the clean mobility sector. We've seen an increase in electric vehicle sales, which is great. We've seen an increase in car sharing, and not just car sharing, but ride sharing as well. But we've seen a really troubling increase in vehicle miles traveled in addition to those more positive trends. In 2015 and 2016, we saw a 2% increase in vehicle miles traveled. That's after a 10-year decline that started in 2004. That's a sharper increase than we've seen in a quarter century. And unfortunately, autonomous vehicles are expected to exacerbate that trend. A researcher, Joan Walker at UC Berkeley, estimates that between the autonomous vehicles could increase vehicle miles traveled from 6 to 90%. That's a huge range and a huge potential impact. And where we fall on that range is going to be determined by the level of individual ownership, but I think also determined by the role that we play in shaping our communities and nudging the market in a positive direction. And we should be cognizant of the fact that there's still a price premium that not everybody can afford to pay to be a part of this clean mobility future. Even with declining costs of electric vehicles and with rebates that are available, there's still an additional upfront cost for an electric vehicle. Autonomous vehicles are estimated to cost an additional $5,000. So we need to be careful as we craft these strategies to really think through the equity impacts as well. So certainly supportive of electric vehicles, and I see a big role for us to play in encouraging more shared use, but cleaner vehicle miles traveled are still vehicle miles traveled. And we need to be aware that there are still some negative impacts that we could experience from that increase of VMT, even if it's clean. Clean tech is just part of the solution, and we need to continue to demand and to ensure that we are coming up with holistic smart growth solutions that take broader community goals into account, like social equity and like the prudent and fiscal use of our resources. Because the bottom line is we can't afford to sprawl, even with cleaner miles traveled. Smart growth saves an average of 38% on upfront construction and infrastructure costs. It saves another 10% on ongoing police, fire, and other services. And it generates 10 times more revenue per acre than suburban development. And this isn't just true at the community level. Again, this is true at the individual level as well. As people are having to live further and further from where they work, their household costs are going up. So if we're just to look at the traditional measure of affordability, which says that 30% of your income or less should be spent on housing, with that rubric, 55% of neighborhoods are considered affordable. But that's only part of the picture. If you take the second largest household cost, which is transportation, you see that actually only 26% of Americans live in neighborhoods that are truly affordable. 1 in 4 people live in a neighborhood that's truly affordable. We have work to do still. And if we think we can sprawl our way out of the affordable housing crisis, it's not only short-sighted, but it's not taking into consideration these other household costs. Right now, there are only 12 counties in the nation where an individual working full-time, earning a prevailing wage, can afford a one-bedroom house at full market value. So what is happening is our neighbors are living further and further from their jobs to afford houses. They're having to drive further and further, so they've got ever longer commutes, and they're working longer hours, more than 50 hours a week, and all just to barely scrape by. So we can't have livable communities. We can't have prosperous communities if this is the context we're working in. So the legacy of this conference has been bringing diverse stakeholders together to solve these intractable challenges. If we're just looking at housing, we may not come up with the right solutions. If we're just looking at reducing greenhouse gas emissions, we may not come up with the right solutions. We need to be working together to develop these holistic solutions. And that legacy started with our first new partners, the public health field, that early on recognized that there was a connection between how we design our communities and health outcomes like obesity. This study back in 2004 showed that there was a correlation between higher density and connectivity, or smart growth, and lower obesity. And that's critical because health and health spending, healthcare costs, are a top 3 household expense as well. So we know that health outcomes are tied to zip codes, to where people live and raise their families. And we know that where people live correlates to race and ethnicity and these other demographics. So when we move forward and develop these solutions, that's why we need to have conversations around racial justice. That's why we need to be in the field of equitable development. Walkable and bikeable communities have better health outcomes. If we look at states across the US, the states that have higher levels of biking and walking have lower diabetes rates and other diseases associated with diabetes. And there's still a lot of low-hanging fruit, despite all the great work that has been done by all of you in this room. Half of all trips are less than 3 miles. Right now, 72% of those trips are made by car. What percent do you think is made by bike? Someone said it, 2%. So somewhere between 2 and 72% is a lot of opportunity to have healthier, more sustainable options. And honestly, we're not asking people to eat their spinach here. There's a pent-up demand for a more sustainable lifestyle. And there are businesses that can capitalize on it as well. It's no exaggeration to say that we can actually make people happier. People with places to walk are more satisfied with the quality of life in their community. 6 in 10 would pay more to live in a walkable community. And of those people, 17% say they would pay a lot more. 1 in 5 people currently living in a detached home, live in the American dream, would prefer to live in an attached home if it was walkable and if they had a shorter commute. So that's 21% of people that want to do the healthier, more sustainable thing. We need to give them more options. So I could go on, but suffice to say, there's still plenty of work to be done. And that's our call to action. We need to continue to form these partnerships. We need to continue to come together to advance smart growth. Because we've got a lot of opportunities here. We can create climate-friendly communities. We can identify integrated mobility solutions. We can increase affordable living, not just affordable housing, affordable living across all the major expenses. We can implement fiscally prudent placemaking. We can improve health outcomes. We can meet market demand, and we can improve the quality of life for all. And I know this sounds ambitious, because it is, and it probably sounds a little pie in the sky, but we've got a set of tools. We've got a set of smart growth tools that can contribute to all of these outcomes. So now more than ever, we need to come together. We need to ensure that our communities are places where all people can thrive, where all people can experience opportunities for prosperity. So thank you for all the work you've done over the years. Thank you for your ongoing commitment to the partners you've made, or the partners hopefully you will make over the next 3 days. And thank you for all the work you've done and will continue to do to advance smart growth.